Okay, so yeah, so welcome to the SPACE4Cities webinar number 3. My name is Alex Gluhak. I work for Open and Agile Smart Cities, which is a network of cities globally that work on locally but globally interoperable data ecosystems. We are part of a project called SPACE4Cities, where we explore the innovative use of satellite technologies and data for urban applications. And this webinar series is basically a part of our initial engagement that we run with the market, where we want to engage different cities around this topic. And the idea is really to learn more about what are sort of European space technologies on offer and the nature of the services. What's the potential actually for the use in cities and urban development applications? And also, how can these technologies solve your problems as a city or as a region or local authority or community? And also, it provides a broader network of people to tap into to network on this topic and learn more about it. Okay, so before I dive into the talk into the presentations today, I just wanted to briefly say a few words about the project itself. So SPACE4Cities is a European project funded by the European Space Programme. And our mission is really to procure solutions from the market that currently don't exist yet. So we will really stimulate the creation of new innovative solutions that make use of satellite data and also other technologies in that space to then use them for the benefit of better management of public areas, green spaces, transport infrastructure, or the maintenance of cities, right? And the project itself is one that's just recently started, so 3 months ago. We've got a rough 5 million budget. More than half of it is actually allocated to solution development that let's say different suppliers on the market can access as the project goes on. And really, we are here really to then put out challenges in front of different suppliers that are worth solving in cities. And we would like them to have suppliers then propose solutions and develop solutions together with us that really help solve critical challenges on the ground. And the consortium has itself already 5 cities. So we've got Helsinki, Amsterdam, Ghent, Guimarães, and also the Athens city region as buyers of those solutions. And our role, for instance, at Open and Agile Smart Cities is also to bring a larger network of cities together around this as replicators around those solutions. And there will be also funding accessible to those then to pilot some of those innovations that will come out. And just a very brief look. So how does this look like? A pre-commercial procurement. It's something that we will launch next year. And we will then, around specific challenges and needs of those cities, engage them suppliers in the design of solutions. So we'll start off like in a funnel-based approach with possibly around 20 suppliers, and then in a stage-wise approach, then narrow down to real prototypes development and select at the end some services that will actually procure in those cities and for the replicator cities as well. Okay, if this doesn't sound exciting enough, today's talk hopefully will excite you even more. So we've got 3 talks today really around mobility and urban planning and the use of space data and space technologies in this context. One will really look around the design of low-emission zones. Another one looks more around understanding the car use and parking in cities in the Nordics. And the third one really around how such data could be used to better design a safer cycling infrastructure in cities. So I hope all topics that are important for today's cities and for the audience here on the call. Okay, and after those presentations, we will really then engage in some panel conversations. So our speakers today are John David, say hi, then Johan, and also Luca. So
hello, everyone.
Perfect. They will all basically have a presentation first, and then after that we will have a panel conversation where you can ask all the questions you wanted to ask them. Okay. Feel free also then to drop some questions into the chat box. If you don't want to raise your voice or hand, or you don't want to turn on your camera later on, it's fine. We'll also pick up those questions and then bring them in front of the speakers. Okay, just a few housekeeping rules, because it's sort of an open Zoom session. Please keep your mic muted, camera off if you're not a speaker. Later on, obviously, when we open up the panel, you raise your hand and then we'll engage you. Obviously, chat window for interactions, and as I said, Q&As at the end of the presentations during the panel session. Okay, so without further ado, sorry, before diving into the talk, we have also further webinars. So there's a fourth one upcoming next month around green space management. And there's also, in a couple of weeks' time, the opportunity for you to engage face-to-face with us if you're interested. Here we will present some of the challenges that the cities have worked on currently in our consortium, and we are soliciting feedback from other cities on this. So yeah, please keep this into your diaries. Okay, without further ado, I will then hand over now to John David, which is our first presenter.
Hello, good morning or afternoon already to everybody. Hi, I'm right now in the IoT Solutions in Barcelona, so it's a pleasure to be here with you. If you give me a second, I'm going to share my screen. I hope that you can see my screen correctly right now. Yeah?
Yes,
okay,
perfect.
Great. Well, we're going to present our solution at Libellium about low emission zones, and only the solution. We're going to talk about how do we get from here, and then why it's important for cities to talk about the low emission zones. Here we are. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for Libellium to be here and talk about the opportunity of how we are helping cities to use all the potential of IoT technology to achieve a more competitive and sustainable and data-quiet society. The data for us is really important. Libellium, we are a passionate company about technology, and we strongly believe in IoT as a tool to help cities and public administrations and decision-making to build a more sustainable and data-quiet society and changing their digital transformation in an efficient manner. Our mission is to provide advanced available technology and specifically solutions to facilitate smarter urban development and improve quality of life. I always say a subject that if technology must serve to improve people's quality of life. If technology is not helping our life quality, then technology is useless. And in that mission to make technology useful, Libellium is an ally for the cities and public administrations. Today, we have in our planet 8 billion people. And the next 30 years, we're going to be 2 billion more. 56% of the population on our planet lives in urban areas and in big cities. And we know that we don't have a planet B. We don't have a second opportunity. So decarbonizing cities is a huge challenge. But in fact, cities can't act if they don't have the data of what is happening in the cities. And the public administration can't make decisions if they don't know where to focus public policies. So it's important to have the data, but it's much more important to know how to use the data. Because normally the cities have a lot of sensors, cities have a lot of solutions, but they don't know what to do with them, or they don't know how to use that data. So we help them to use that data and transform them in KPIs and actions to improve better life quality. And we could talk about cities. We're going to talk about much more cities, but we will also talk about ports. Big ports have big cities around them. And normally the port activity have the direct influence in the city and the residents. We talk about noise, the boats, night work, odors, container traffic. So in ports and low emission zones, we could also focus on two issues, about PM particles and NOx emissions. And the same way, we have the same situation in highways. Big cities need big highways to connect each other. And that brings traffic and emissions, specifically to PM 2.5 and NOx. And so we could see that when we talk about the importance of monitoring impact of traffic, cities, highways, and ports, we need to identify the hotspots. We have to identify where is the problem to solve it, and we have to remember the direct impact on citizens' health and these emissions. Significantly, we need to help reduce health risks like asthma, cardiovascular diseases, respiratory issues among the urban population. And that's the main aim of the low emission zones. Reduce this impact, reduce this contamination, and reduce these health risks that we have as people who live in big cities. No, for that, we have a solution in Enviro 360. Enviro 360 is a model to calculate the impact of traffic, port activity, and highways in cities, and what decisions can the public administration, the public tenders, can take to reduce the emissions of climate change gases. How do we do that? And first of all, it's really important talk about data collecting. We talk about sensors, we talk about sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen monoxide, and nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and many types of gases, harmful gases. And because about cameras, where we use computer vision, and we also can talk about noise sensors, odors, etc. And with that information, and it's important to say, and we're going to talk about this more, and we don't need sensors in the cities, and we have many tools, and we're going to talk about Copernicus now. So with that information, with all the data that we could connect and we could collect, and we use traffic model and training for the dispersion models using Copernicus and algorithms like Chimere. We're going to talk about that now. And with all that, we make simulation scenarios in the city with artificial intelligence based on a digital twin of the city. This is really important. And where we can also include the local, regional, or national regulations. And we're going to see some details right now. But in resume, and really what's most important, we identify a problem, we simulate decisions, or the public administrations can see the results. So with this tool, we are helping cities to, before making actions, before making decisions, we simulate them in a digital twin. So we can see how this going to really help to reduce the impact of traffic and gases and emissions in the city. As we said before, and the most important thing is that Enviro 360 doesn't need air quality sensors on the ground, and we don't need cameras. If we have them, the tool is much more useful. But we use we can use the databases of the cities. But the most important, Copernicus and the European air quality system, has an historic data of the city, and with our artificial intelligence, we can make a dispersion model of emissions. Copernicus is the European satellite program dedicated for monitoring Earth and its environment. First of all, data collection. We use satellites to detect the air pollutions, such as gases, NO2, SO2, CO, and PM particles in urban areas. Without this information, and we don't need hardware. We don't need hardware. The city doesn't need to invest money and have hardware. We have a European tool like Copernicus. And with all this information that we collect, we use algorithms like Chimere. It's a modeling tool for simulating and geometry, transport, atmospheric gases, and aerosols. With these modeling, we provide solutions to predict air pollution levels and various air quality. Sorry for the noise. And as you can see, we use satellite data in Copernicus and three main verticals: air quality index, sources of pollution. Pollen index isn't really a traffic problem, but we also use this information. And with all this information, we provide a solution for cities in order to calculate traffic impact and make decisions to reduce those emissions. And with all of this, we create low emission zones. And now we're going to see exact example, the city of Cartagena. Cartagena is a city in the south of Spain, where we are using this solution. We are hoping the city of Cartagena to make a low emission zones and reduce the traffic impact and the traffic emissions in both the city. We make possible to track pollution sources down to the city block and streets. We don't go with the main information of the whole city. We could go street by street, block by block. And this is crucial for understanding pollution distribution and identify the who is making that contamination? Traffic, industrial sites, industrial heating, residential. So we got all this data and we transform them in a solution for low emission zones to predict in advance, do some simulations, how certain regulations will be helpful to the city to reduce emissions and traffic impact. As you can see at the right, we have 10 different type of simulations. We could limit the circulation of an area only for electric streets. We can make that the cars could only go inside the city if it's going to go to a parking. We could make that companies like Amazon can only go inside the city in determined hours, etc. Like that. We could simulate 10 different scenarios and see how does this help to reduce emissions. And we're going to see example. For example, now here we can see at the left the city of Cartagena before making a simulation and after making the simulation. As you can see, this is the main street that's in blue in the right part. This is where we simulated an action. We simulated a scenario, and where we can see that in that area, the reduction of NO2 particles, or gas, got much lower. And the rest of the city doesn't have solved the problem. So here we can see, for example, the simulation that we did here has a good effect. Has a good effect to reduce emissions. And we can also see in the online tool and the website, and we can see how much emissions we can find in each street and each block of the city. That way, if there's a hospital in a determined area, we can make specific actions to reduce contamination, gases, or PM particles in a concrete part of the city. So, with this information, we have data quality. We have the design of the emission zones, and with all of this, the cities can make a low emission zone. They can make plans for future to help the population have a better air quality life and have cities more sustainable and much less problems of gases and traffic jams. We can see three type of useful cases and the success stories where we are doing this program. First of all, the city of Cartagena. We have been talking about this before. We have this solution right now implemented in the city of Cartagena. We have more than 30 devices of gases, and we are making the low emission zones with firework technology. We could keep on seeing other type of success stories. For example, the city of Zaragoza in the north of Spain. We are helping them to reduce the noise in the city, specifically the noise of traffic and the noise of commercial areas, bars, and people eating and drinking in the streets. We are helping them to reduce the noise and contamination in the streets. From cities, we could go to highways. Real important, for example, the use case that we have in the north of Spain, in Vizcaya, where we are helping them to analyze what is the impact of the cars in the highways of Bilbao, or the north in the Basque Country, where we provide them specific data, as you can see here, of where are the main areas of noise, how is the influx of the contamination is working, and how is in the model of transformed gases is working, where we can identify where we have the problem. With this type of maps, we can identify a specific area where we have a problem with the gases, of emissions, and we can act exactly there. And to finish, for example, we could talk about ports. Ports is another really important subject where we are working in the south of Spain, in Algeciras, in the port of Algeciras. The port of Algeciras is a huge success story where we are analyzing the impact of the port activity in all the cities and all the bay around Algeciras. So Algeciras is the most important port of the south of Europe, and it has huge containers, huge number of boats. They are working daily and nightly, and this has a huge impact. This has a huge impact in the city of Algeciras, in the city of Gibraltar, and all the cities all around the bay of Algeciras. We do all this with Copernicus data, we said before, but we also use hardware, specific hardware of Libellium for air quality. And what's really most important also is that we have to talk about our laboratory. It is important to have data, but it is most important to have the correct data. Most of cities buy really low-cost sensors, or they don't use Copernicus. So the data that the devices, that the IoT devices are giving them, are really poor quality. So it is important to count with a high-quality system like our laboratory, and where we could calibrate the sensors, and we could certificate that the information that the city is receiving is the data that they need, and it is real data. So this is really, really important for us. I think that I am in time, so thank you. And I am open for any type of question, any type of information or needs. I am completely here for answer any type of question. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, John David. You're bang on time, so you actually get a couple of minutes left, so really good.
Great.
So I think obviously we will share the slides. So if it was a bit too fast for some, you know, we'll always can catch up, and also you will have the recording accessible to you after the presentation here as well. So yeah, thanks. I think for questions we will wait still for the panel. So I think at that moment, I would then like to hand over to Johan now, who will then talk about what he's doing in different Nordic cities. So yeah, the floor is yours, Johan. Okay, so thanks.
Thank you, Alex. So good morning, everyone. My name is Johan. I originally have a background from architect school, but most of my life I've been building technology and products. I currently run a mobility advisory out of Copenhagen and Oslo. And today what we're going to look at is essentially one of the experiments we've been running, and that's specifically on, you know, how our cars being used, and parking particularly. And we looked at that in Nordic cities. We currently have a working title for it, which is Auto Atlas. Basically, we're trying to like explore this by the use of satellite data and an AI model. So the reason why we're looking into this is, as we see across the globe, and particularly here in Europe, you know, cities are really filling up with cars. In the Nordic in particular, this is due to many things. One being, you know, personal economy just being a lot better now. We can afford cars. It's a preference out in the suburbs. And also we have a lifestyle that really demands a car. You will see that across both Copenhagen and also people have summer homes, places they go on the weekends. They buy a car that justifies the purchase, and they store it in the city, and it's becoming a problem. That problem can be broken down to many different things, you know, being space, efficiency in terms of, you know, traffic throughput, safety, of course, pollution, which John touched upon. And even though we're converting a lot of cars to EVs, we have a lot of local particle-based pollution still, and of course, the matter of public health. But for this talk particularly, I want to focus on the challenge of space. So, and when I mean space, it's basically, you know, how much space we allocate in our city to cars. And if we look at how we measure cars in the city today, it's kind of what John touched upon. Like, we have some sensors to measure this. We use toll roads, as you see in these pictures, to see, you know, how many people are coming in and out of the city. Where you're doing manual surveys, you've probably seen people in high-vis vests on the side of the street, kind of like counting stuff. We use parking data. But what we get out of all of this, you know, monitoring is we get numbers, we get tables, databases, maybe some dashboards, maybe even digital twins. But it doesn't really tell us anything about the quality or the specificity of how parking is in cities. Because when you look at the debates and the heated debates that are about parking in the cities, it's very much down to neighborhoods. And, you know, how does my street look? You know, where do I want to place my car outside of my house? There was a study done that, you know, the point you walk more than 60 meters from your home, you don't consider parking being close to your house anymore. So there's, you know, that very hyper local data like that really drives the understanding of parking. And that kind of brought us to, you know, wanting to explore, are there other layers we can add to the discussion about parking in cities? And then we started looking at, you know, what do we actually have available for open data that can be utilized to actually, you know, improve this discussion. So we started looking into aerial imagery, satellite imagery, and then combine that with, you know, starting to train an AI on identifying parking cars. And for the ones of you in the crowd that like to get nerdy, let me give you a little insight into what we've been doing so far. We started looking at data sources, some of the obvious ones to start. A little bit of issue with some of the resolution on the detail level for that. We ended up, for the current model we're running, we're using the basic Google Maps Tiles API, which means there's a mix of data sources, across aerial and most of the satellite imagery that's already been mentioned in the previous talk. So we pulled that data in to cover all of the cities we've been looking at. And then we started building the model on object recognition. And if you worked with this before, you're very familiar with YOLO. We also looked at a model called Waldo, which I highly recommend. It is very resource intensive because it's identifying a lot of other objects as well. So we ended up building more of a customized model to make sure we are resource efficient and also in terms of cost. So that's basically pulling out the object we need, which in this case is cars from the data we have available. And then it turns out to be harder than you think once you get into it. So there's a bunch of trickery that goes into this. Part of it is, enhancing the images. What typically in old movies used to be like zoom and enhance. That is actually kind of a thing in terms of like increasing contrast and pulling out object. We also want to separate out a lot of vehicles. So like trucks and buses, we wanted out, or like other form factors like, trailers and tractors, that kind of stuff. And then the most hard part, which was kind of surprising to us, was all the stitching issues, like vehicles ending up between tiles, and also the fact that, the Earth is not a perfect sphere. So like stitching all of this together turned out to be really hard. But once we've done that, we can start running the model on various areas. And we started out with like smaller areas. So this one we see right here is a little industrial town in the north of Sweden called Skellefteå, which is where population is supposed to grow rapidly due to some new factories. And we get these kind of imagery of understanding, the cars in that area. So now with the model working on small areas like this, we started looking into the big cities in the Nordics. And when I say big, I mean, for the rest of you around Europe, I mean, the cities in Nordics are not really that big, but these areas combined adds up to about 4,000 square kilometers. And covering about 5 million people. So that would be about 20% of the population in these countries. And within these cities altogether, there's an estimate of about 3 million cars. So that's basically what we wanted to track and capture. So when we run this model through, we are able to get this new imagery of cities that tells us something about how parking is deployed and used in the cities. So this would be, for instance, Stockholm, where you can see kind of like where the density is. We can look at cities like Copenhagen, which has a very defined grid structure, a lot of street parking, as you can see. This would be Oslo, which is my hometown, a lot of industrial parking. You can see to the right there. This is Helsinki. Helsinki, I mean, we can zoom out and look at the broader area. I'm just pulling out the downtown area here, but it's very interesting to see how also this bleeds out into the areas around the city centers. This is Reykjavik, Iceland. And what you see like at this zoomed out images is these clusters of parking. So that's where it's useful to also start zooming in and understand, how is parking deployed in this kind of like commercial industrial areas, and how is it different in the kind of various residential areas, right? So we put some of those images out on the internet and got tons of feedback, particularly from people in city planning and a lot of politicians, because this kind of added to a discussion because it gave people like something visual to reference. An interesting part was that we got feedback both from kind of like Green Party side wanted to remove parking or cars from the cities, but also from the other side of the ones saying like, this is really showing the demand and the importance that we maintain parking. Of course, we had a neutral approach to this, but it really shows that, adding this kind of data layer to the typical kind of like spreadsheet understanding of the city makes it really useful. But about that making it useful, like that's kind of what we wanted to go next, is looking into, how do we actually use this and put it into the processes we have in terms of urban development. One is that it's actually kind of helpful to put this data against other measures. So again, back to where I live in Oslo, we've been for many years now working at removing cars from downtown, and the strategy has been to remove parking. And now when we look at the satellite data, we can actually, see that the city center here has a very low density of cars due to that strategy. So we can use it to actually measure some of these strategies that's been put in place. The other one is to look into the actual space that's taken up by the cars. I mean, we allocate a lot of space to cars if we look at roads as well, but if we only separate out parking, an average car is about 13 square meters. That's the space it takes up. And if we add up all the cars we picked out with this model from Copenhagen, it added up to 1.7 million square meters. And just for context, I mean, you could fill all of Hyde Park in London with this, and you wouldn't even be enough. For comparison, I believe that about 1.4 million. So again, a lot of space is allocated, and we can start pulling that out as actually data. But the one thing we're looking at right now, which I think is like one of the first use cases we'll probably dive more into, is build more understanding of how parking is being utilized. And this is typically done as, surveys, which have where you basically pick out an area, you do like a survey once or twice a year, and you try to understand how it's being used. What we want to supplement those kind of processes with is like if we add, this kind of model on top, is to understand, what are the cars that's just being stored? So long-term kind of like storage in the city, and which ones are the ones that have, higher rotation, which is actually used more frequent. And if we start to understand that, we can also separate out, what kind of parking should be allocated where in the city to optimize for the various uses. And what we would do here is basically start adding time as a factor to such models to understand what happens from day to day, from week to week, month to month. So specifically, we would start using, looking at the size of the vehicle, the position, color, and these kind of metrics to identify, changes in the imagery. This also stays respectful to privacy, which is really good because we don't really need to know the license or the identity of the person, which is also nice for doing this kind of service. The big change here, of course, is that we would need more frequent updated data. And of course, a model like this works the same for a satellite image as it does for drone surveys, which would be one of the tactics one could use here. So what's next, and why I'm kind of excited to speak to a group like this is we'd love to hear from you. Like, what are some of the cities we should run this model on? Because now we gotten to a point where it works quite well. We're quite confident in how it operates. It's gotten quite cheap for us. So love to hear what kind of cities that will be useful to build some of this data on. We've already got a lot of requests from cities like Melbourne, some of the cities in Netherlands, but again, would love to hear what cities we should focus on. The other one is we've gotten already quite a few use cases and problem spaces that we want to look into. But again, this part of the reason why we want to put it into the world before anything is ready is just to hear how would this be useful? What should we explore in terms of use cases as well? So if you want to partner up somehow on that, please let us know. Shoot us an email, and we can kind of look into whether there's something we can do around that. And I think that's about it. I'm going to close off. If you want to connect, please do so. We love to nerd out about these kind of things. And again, I just want to emphasize that this has just been an experiment for us. And the further exploration from this is really kind of teaming up around a problem and kind of deploy that and see what we can do with it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Johan. Very, very nice exploration here. And I'm sure there will be cities interested in what you do. And yeah, please keep in mind the SPACE4Cities open call, which might be an opportunity to shape things up towards city needs. Okay, cool.
I took some very active notes on that slide, Alex.
Cool, don't worry. Okay, so now after Johan's presentation, we've got now Luca coming with our final talk of the session before we open up the panel conversation. So Luca, again, the floor is yours. You might be muted, so maybe unmute yourself. Yeah, you're still muted, Luca. So maybe, yeah. Perfect now.
Hello, everyone. So you might be wondering how space technologies has to do with safe cycling infrastructure. So I'm Luca Leomanni. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Social Tech Projects, and I have a background in electronics and software engineering, in particular in machine vision and AI. And today I will show how space technologies is helping cities to design better and safer cycling infrastructure. So the first cycle path was built in the late 19th century between Pasadena and Los Angeles in California. And by the 30s, bicycles had become a widespread mode of transport. During World War II, bicycles became even more popular due to full rationing across both the United States and Europe. Cycling peaked around the 40s. In that same period, Benjamin Bowden unveiled the Space Lander. So it was a space-age bicycle with its futuristic design that was capturing both the imagination of a post-war generation that was eager for progress and innovation. But after the war, as economies began to recover, the prominence of the bicycle began to wane in favor of motor vehicles. And the energy crisis of the 70s led to more cycling paths built in the 80s. So in many European cities, you might see a developing of new cycling infrastructure, like in Copenhagen or Amsterdam. And starting from the 80s, a new cycling era started. And since then, more and more cycling lanes have been developed. So the European Cyclists Federation identified almost 500,000 kilometers of cycling infrastructure. This is probably a lower approximation, considering that many roads have not been mapped yet. As you can tell, managing the vast extension of cycling roads poses a significant challenge for cities and urban planners that are dedicated to ensuring that this infrastructure remains safe and well maintained. Just to give you a few examples, issues can relate to different things like signage or traffic conditions or poor road maintenance or poor light conditions. So we had to develop a cost-effective solution that enables the assessment of several factors of cycling infrastructure. This solution that we call the road system is composed by a sensor device and a camera installed on a bicycle that is able to scan and acquire several data about the road conditions. Thanks to Galileo, the global navigation satellite system, we're able to identify the accurate position of the detected issues. And through a web dashboard, it's possible to explore the data collected and see the major issues directly on an interactive map. So now I want to show a live demo of, I will just share another page here. Yeah. And in here, you will see, I need to just make it larger. Hope you can see the map. Yeah, obviously you do. Yes. So now on the screen, you will see actually two main cycle paths that have been scanned in Copenhagen. And it's possible to explore the different layers. For example, if I'm now going towards the different layer set, let me just to move this around. I can see, I need to refresh the map. Yeah, I think I need to log in. Sorry for that. Yep.
It's fine. It's always,
Yeah,
it's always brave to have
yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is a live, so it's much more fun and interactive. But as you can see here, there are these two main bicycle paths that are, I would say, this is the map that is from Copenhagen. And here it's possible to see the different layers. For example, in this case, what you see is like the road conditions about the surface. And it's really easy to explore through the system, which are the more critical area. For example, if you go to surface quality, you will see now there is the data that you see on the left side of the screen. You see that the roads are more damaged. But you can also highlight the data using, we implemented the heat map that uses agglomerative cluster to make these issues more visible. And the good thing is that then you can easily highlight the points that are, I would say, the most critical. You can explore what are the issues there. And if you pick one image, you will see, for example, directly the roads and why the condition was so bad. In this case, you will see the roughness of the roads was quite extreme. And but of course, you can also explore different layers. And one other layer that is also interesting is the noise pollution. So if you go to noise pollution, you will see, I would say, something that probably would that the main road that is like crossing out of Copenhagen is the most noisy one. And this is quite relevant to understand also how the condition where people are moving and living across the cities. And another aspect might be also the air quality. And related to the air quality, you can also see here that the air quality in Copenhagen is quite general, quite good, but you can see some pocket of data that might be some points that have the values that are above the median values. So, and what we do with this interface, we also allow, for example, to measure things. So if you go to the, for example, if you want to measure a stretch of, for example, this area that is actually quite damaged, you can just get to the point and you can understand more or less how is the extension of the area. Or otherwise, you might even check the area that is also needs to be. So if I'm zooming even more, I would probably see, yeah, I can even detect, what is the extent maybe of a possible, area that I need to cover for eventual reparations. And what we have also, we have the possibility to highlight some issues through the system. So as I showed you before, this is the road device that we use. We have a switch. And according to the switch, we can see the highlights directly in the map. And we are able also to add highlights manually in the map itself. So if we are adding an highlight, we can go towards the warning. And here I can, for example, create an issue directly on the map according to the situation. Then I can see, and I can add some metadata where I can create a report at the end. And this report can be exported, and you can get all the issues collected and with their geolocation position. So this is really an easy tool that our consultants are using to build reports about what is exactly the conditions. But coming back to the slide deck. Also, you can see here that we are also using the AI. And with the AI, we are able to classify the issues in several categories and classes. And the process is simple. So what we do, we receive from the cities the list of the bike lanes that need to be assessed. We scan them and provide the urban administrator with reports containing the identified issues and the actions to improve the cycling infrastructure. We collect a comprehensive data set that is, as you can see here, composed by different parameters that are like the surface that I show you, the pothole detection, the lighting condition, the road width. We have a sensor that measures the width of a road, and also environmental data like air quality, gas emissions, and noise pollution. And also it's quite relevant also the experience. What was the experience for the users as well? Yeah, and another aspect is like probably I would say we once you're thinking about safe cycling infrastructure, you will think also some major factors that contribute to the safe cycling infrastructure, and these are, for example, related to the design, to the prevention, and exposure to risk situation. For example, one-directional lanes should be the one preferred options to reduce risk of accidents, and usually there is this kind of European that is becoming kind of a guideline, but also often it's going kind of a rule to build new infrastructure is 2.2 meters. That is the recommended width. And basically, we would ideally want to move from point A to point B with the least number of crossings. So everything that helps to reach this goal, it's of course, it's an improvement of the safety risk. So the continuous segregation, the gap separation, the signalized junctions, and other safety measures are relevant to guarantee safe bicycle path. Then there is another methodology that is quite popular in Europe that is called cycle wrap. So cycle wrap comes from the IRAP methodology that is used for normal roads, traffic roads. But in this case, cycle wrap is focused on cycle lane. And this methodology evaluates 43 parameters for every 10 meters of cycling infrastructure. And I provide a risk assessment for each bike lane. And so what we do, we offer assessment that are customized to the specific needs, including reports on identified issues, traffic auditor reports, and cycle wrap assessments. So far, we scanned more than 1,500 kilometers in several European cities, starting from Danish cities. So we are based in Copenhagen, so we are a Danish company, but of course, our system can be deployed in a few days in any part of Europe. So also for you, if you have any good, I would say, potential cities that you would like to maybe start to have a scan or explore, of course, we want to know more about that. And the road system can efficiently scan large cycling infrastructure. As I show you, it's really easy to identify the issues also on large extension of areas. And these technologies enables cities to go also into the direction of zero road deaths. That is the goal that European actually put as a target. And of course, it's not only about safety. We also need to keep in mind that cycling is the most sustainable mode of transport and helps to reach the city decarbonization goals. So, of course, having a safe cycling infrastructure is like an enablement for reaching even the decarbonization goals that we all are looking for, and we are really working on that direction as well. So what we learned today is that cycling is one of the most sustainable modes of transport, and we have a common goal that is make it safer and reduce deaths to zero. And that space technologies like the road system can help us to make cost-effective safety assessment of cycle lanes. So if you are working in this direction, of course, you are feel free to get in touch with us, and we can collaborate together to make an assessment, to explore what is the condition in your city as well. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Luca. Again, very nice presentation, and I love like the punch that you make on space lander and ET. So linking it to space technologies and cycling. So well done to this one. Yeah. All right. So yeah, now comes actually my second favorite part of the session, which is like a bit of a panel conversation with our speakers, and you might be pleased to hear. I think this has been the busiest chat window I've seen in a while. So lots of questions coming in from different people, so we can hopefully pick your brains on this. But before we open, obviously, the floor to questions, I will just try to ask you also a few little things. Yeah, so obviously starting on, I've got obviously John David, yeah. So on your talk, I think it's quite nice. So you related obviously to Copernicus and how you're using it for some of your I guess getting the impact levels on the ground in terms of pollution, but then you at the same time you mentioned about street level detail for low emission zone planning. So my question is, you know, is Copernicus really capable of going down to street level in terms of like, you know, the data, or is this something that you need to augment then with local sensors? So can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, as I tried to explain in my presentation, we can use our low emission zones tool with only Copernicus data satellite. It is really important to focus on this because this tool is working right now in cities. In the city of Germany right now, where we don't have sensors in the street. We only use Copernicus. So we use Copernicus satellite data to focus on what emissions are in the area, and with our artificial intelligence tool and with Enviro360, we prognosticate how this is going to move and how is the emissions going to change due to traffic and changes regulations. So if we have air quality sensors on the ground, there will be more data, and with more data, more complete the tool is. But the tool is 100% efficient and working in cities right now, and where we don't have any type of sensors on the ground. Yeah.
And then the role of the sensors on the ground, is it just giving you then more accuracy or more detail or more? So why would you actually then deploy sensors overall?
Yeah, the sensors on the ground, first of all, gives us, it's like a different use case, but we're going to put the two things together. First of all, it gives us a real-time monitoring and data in the ground. That is really important because with sensors on the ground, I could tell you right now at this moment at 1:50 of the afternoon in this street or in this area of the city, what PM particles, what NO2 gases, what CO gases, what levels of noise do you have? Without prognostication. And, you know, Copernicus is like a worldwide tool, a European tool. We give you a study by satellite imaging that is really important for the ground sensors. I could tell you in real time, this is so important, exactly what is happening. And with the ground sensors, we can see and we can prove that our prediction of how the gases are going to move or change is real or not. With the sensors in the ground, we can see, we said that if you change this street only for registered cars, the PM particles in 1 month would be reduced to 50%. With the sensor in the ground, I can tell you if that was right or not. That is really important. And also, to finish this question, with sensors in the ground, if there is a high level of emissions, you can receive a different type of alert to, for example, close the street or make any type of real-time action at the moment. And not only for prediction, you can have decisions in real time on the ground.
Cool. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. To know it. Okay, Johan, you're the next one. Again, a very fascinating talk. What I really like is obviously your sort of current sort of next step towards adding the time dimension, right? And then being able to track, parking or vehicle actually on a parking lot level, right? Let's say like this, right? So you can classify then behaviors of different cars and so on, right? That you can spot or classify with your solution. Now, obviously, this only works or is accurate, right, if you have the right time resolution as well. So what sort of time resolution are we now talking in terms of like data that you get from, let's say, satellites or data that you get from aerial images and so on? So how frequently is this updated for a certain area?
So right now we're basing ourselves off of Google, which obviously is both infrequent and inconsistent. So diving into actual project, we would probably pull data from elsewhere. The most useful time range from things we looked at is like just to have the ability to do daily updates would help a lot. One case we've been looking at is, how in a lot of these areas you're trying to basically through mode shift, reduce the amount of parking. So things like parking around train stations, that used to be really big, that probably can be scaled down a little bit and replaced with like, residential areas, more bike parking. How do you change that? And if we then have daily snapshots over a certain period of time, you can actually, make meaningful data on, how you could scale that down. And the reason why that's interesting is when you ask people, like through surveys, or if you ask the one responsible for the station, you'll get answers like, oh, it's always full. Like it's always full on Tuesdays. And, adding data, as we know, gives a very different story. So I think that would be like a useful time frame.
And do you know, is there something already, a service out there? Like, are there satellite services that provide you daily updates or
there are some that are daily. We've been struggling with a little low resolution on those. That is also a subject, of course, in how much you're willing to pay. But that being said, we're not really worried because we use satellite for the stuff we can, and then we can supplement with the drone surveys, which is also quite easy to use as imagery.
Okay, very good. No, thank you. Now a question is for Luca, and then we'll open up to all the questions that are posted here. So Luca, again, I think I really like you kind of combining obviously the geolocation dimension of satellite services. In this case, you were not using Earth observation, but rather the positioning services like Galileo, and complementing this obviously with your sensing system on the ground. But have you also thought about, like, is there any, because you mentioned you're mapping also noise or other things or potential pollution, who knows? Have you also thought about including Earth observation capabilities like Copernicus into your service?
Yeah, that is a good question because we are working on that area as well, because it's something that we see as a possibility for the future, because what we have right now is like this in situ data that are collected, we say every 20 centimeters and 30 centimeters of scanning. And of course, this might be quite interesting to understand these data points, how they correlate with I would say daily observation. So we might create a model that take into account this local data, in situ data, with a larger map model for the Copernicus data. So definitely something that we are looking to that. We already started to have some prototype to map this data on from the scale, but we are not having that as a part of our solution yet, but it's something that we are going to explore, of course, further. Yeah, that's a good point. It's amazing to have such a tool like Copernicus that can, I would say, transform data points and improve the accuracy at regional level, or just it's fantastic. It's really fan of ESA technologies. We should all be proud.
Yeah, thanks, Luca. Okay, perfect. So with that sort of like my questions out of the way to start with, I think I let Ari maybe pick some from the list. I don't know if you have time for all, but let's go for it. So feel free to sort of like select some out.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Hello, I'm Ari from Forum Virium. So yeah, there was quite a good amount of questions, 11 in total, and I was putting them together a little bit to save time. But first for the JD from Libellium, Eva Paderewska has 2 questions. So what is the lifetime operation of your devices, and like what unit should be responsible for monitoring the technical conditions of these devices? I guess the unit here is like a city representative unit.
Yeah, thanks. Our lifetime for the we have different type of air quality sensors. When we talk about electrochemical sensors, that are the type of sensor that are CO, NO2, NO, H2S, etc., and they have 2 years lifetime, and they have to be changed each 2 years because they are electrochemical sensors. They have this gas, and so it's important to have them updated each 2 years. Other type of sensors like PM particles, CO2 particles don't have that lifetime so short. They can have like 5 years lifetime, so it's much more long in time. And that, I said in the presentation, our sensors are calibrated by our laboratory, an official certificated laboratory, and that gives an efficient data. And with monitoring system of the device online, we help that data to be high quality during the 2 years of the chemicals and the more than 5 years of the optical sensors. So I think that I answered that question. And what type of units responsible have to be in the low emission zones? Look, when we have seen that every city, of course, works a different way. We have seen cities where the unit is a smart city unit. The other cities have like the environmental unit, and the other the traffic unit. We think, and our experience is that the 3 units must work together when we talk about an efficient environmental and low emission zones. It is so important that the unit of traffic, smart cities, and environment must work together, because this solution has many use cases. We are talking about how are we going to make the level of emissions lower in the city. That is important for the environmental units. We are talking about how this is going to have an impact direct in the traffic. So the traffic unit have to be there. And of course, we are talking about IoT technology. We are talking about smart cities. So the smart city technology units have to be involved also. I had if it's okay for you, there's a question that they made this that I'm really excited to talk about, is that where do we see our technology in 3-5 years, our roadmap? I would like to say really quickly that right now we are working in a really important project in Catalonia, in the coast of Spain, where we are going to measure the impact of traffic, the emissions of CO2 of the traffic with cameras, with computer vision. And this is completely new. Yesterday morning, we made the presentation of this project, where we're going to work together with the government of Catalonia in Spain. We're going to install cameras in the roads of the Generalitat of Catalonia, and we are going to measure only with cameras and not with sensors in the ground the emissions of CO2 with the speed of the cars, how many cars, etc. And we're going to implement this information with Copernicus, of course. So we're going to make a new tool, and that is going to be really important in the next years, where we could measure the impact of the traffic only with cameras and not with sensors on the ground.
Okay, so you're already giving away what you're going to be proposing to our open call. Cool. Ari, please, next one.
Yeah, let's go on. So let's move to the beta mobility now. So Johan, there was a couple of questions about so how can you check that the building shadows and tree cover will affect the car recognition of your AI model?
Guess you.
Oh. Yeah. No, that's a great question, and we actually had the same question going into it. So the easy answer is shade turned out to be not as big of a problem. It performs quite well in shade. That's because of a lot of the image enhancement tricks we're doing. Anything that's physically blocking, however, we can't do anything about. And that's also something we saw in, some of the cities like Stavanger, which is on the west coast of Norway, very rich oil town. We kind of learned through this data that there's so many like double garages for their cars, and they have a lot of them. So you can kind of see that in the imagery. So blocked image, not possible. Shadows performing quite well.
All right, thank you for the concise answer. And I have a next interesting one for you. So this comes from Quentin Gauthier. So which database did you use to train your AI model? You mentioned that you had YOLO, V8, and Waldo, but you ended up designing your own one.
Yep. So Waldo is, I mean, a lot of great training has gone into that. That's why these, libraries are quite helpful. But for the last part of the training, we actually had to do a lot of it ourselves. So that's why we started with smaller areas, building our own training data and testing on that. There's kind of like no way around that. And also we find that, there are specific things in the Nordics that needs to be taken care of. Like here in the Nordics, we go a lot of skiing. So a lot of the cars will have those cargo roof boxes on top. Not a lot of models out there have been like looking at that kind of character. So there's always like these regional differences that you need to account for, and then you have to build kind of your own training data as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, since you have given so concise answers, I will give you a next one. So, so can you use your service for parking enforcement and like combine it with the kind of like this regular enforcement technologies like scanning cars? And can you also measure like empty parking spaces?
Right. So two very good questions. So for empty parking spaces, you would really rely on data from the city and kind of compare them. Working with various cities, this is data that is typically not very high quality. They will know how many parking spots that are in a zone or a region, but specifically there's typically not shape files for that. So that's where we could see, some of the data improve, hopefully. We could pick them out and measure it. We haven't done that yet. For the other question about enforcement, that's really interesting because we've kind of been thinking about that. For real-time enforcement, you would definitely be using other technology. But what you could use it for is to see where you should prioritize, the enforcement to see, if there's this more remote parking space being used kind of outside of the rules, and that could inform you that, to send out people there or change the rules or put up, maybe like a gate or something like that. So again, primarily for analysis purposes to inform other measures, I would say.
Thanks, Johan. Ari, I think you've got a live question, so maybe you could bring it in as well, Eva.
Yeah, Eva, go ahead.
Could you please?
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, my camera doesn't work, so I cannot show myself. But yeah, all the presentations were very, very interesting. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm connected with more with the climate adaptation to adaptation of cities to climate change. And I think that all the devices are really great, and all the methodologies you presented. But I think that in order to make them useful and actually used, the city administration should be included, should implement those solutions. So do you already talk with the municipalities to make a use of those devices, of those programs, or do you plan? Because I know that there are many great applications connected with analyzing data from Copernicus and also with usage of small other devices, measuring the quality of air or other issues connected with climate change.
Eva, I think you could see a lot of the presenters today presenting concrete case studies with cities and municipalities. But maybe just very briefly.
Yeah, but my question, I know that it was already done with cooperation of the municipalities, but I'm concerned because there may be just one case examples, but it should be maybe regulated. What do you think? Should it be regulated by law?
I see. Okay, obviously, very quick. Who wants to take this Johan, Luca, John, very briefly.
Really quickly. And right now in Spain, for example, and the low emission zones is all regulated by law. It is obligated for every city that have more than 50,000 inhabitants, and also obligated for cities for more than 20,000 inhabitants that have high levels of contamination of emissions of gases for traffic. So Enviro360 and our IoT tool is made specifically to solve a problem, to solve a situation in our country. And this situation is also all around Europe with the low emission zones. Make a low emission zone doesn't mean only I'm going to close this square, no traffic in this square, I have a low emission zone. No, we need data. We need to know where are the problems. We need to know what areas of the city have a really problem with the contamination. And with this tool, we help them to reduce the impact of traffic and have a better life quality. So yes, of course, this solves the problem in the cities, and all the data we have, you could use our own platform, or we could integrate this data to the smart city platform also. This is really important. So we could integrate the data, and that way have tool in the main tool of the town hall.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Now, Ari, maybe pick the next one. Sorry.
So Luca already answered his questions in the chat. Luca, if you want to
elaborate on that, if you want to. Of course. Oh, yeah. Now I'm online. I think one question was about how we measure the data from the air quality, the noise, and we use the calibrated sensor that are equipped in the sensor device. So once we are scanning the cycle roads, we are acquiring the data through this sensor that are on our device. And we have the light sensor, the noise, and air gas emission, and the particulate matter sensor for the air quality. And another question that have been asked says, who is scanning the cycle roads? It's our operators right now, so our people that are trained to use the system, also signaling in the system when there is an issue that needs to be reported and assessed in a more, I would say, professional way than just volunteers that are scanning without knowing too much about the cycle infrastructure. But of course, in the future, we might train some of these volunteers in different organizations and let them to make the work of the scanning side, since they will be the main beneficiaries of a better cycle infrastructure, especially cyclist organizations or passionate about sustainable mobility. So that is, of course, it's a good way to go in the future. So yeah, we are probably going that direction soon.
Brilliant.
All right, thank you. Alex, we still have like one question on behalf of the SPACE4Cities Consortium for all presenters. So, well, JD already like answered a little bit, but you all get to still answer. So what's the next step on your roadmap? So in our SPACE4Cities project, we are doing this pre-commercial procurement, and we need the suppliers who participate to go beyond the state of the art, so to produce something new that is not yet on the market. So yeah, what's in your roadmap, and where do you see your solutions and similar ones that are on the market to go in the next 3 to 5 years? You can take turns. Maybe JD can go first, and or we can go in the same order as the presentations.
Yeah, I think JD already gave a few ideas with the cameras, right? So basically, I don't know if you want to expand upon it, but so basically sensing air quality, even just through imagery rather than chemical sensors. I think that's also one thing. Yeah. JD, you want to expand? Yeah, Luca, maybe you want to say something about yours?
Yeah, I can say something. I think I see the future that all these solutions might integrate each other, right? So I think the future might be in improving and understanding the data even better through different, I would say, interfaces. So I would see in the future that the solutions like Libellium and I would say all the other startup solutions as well, they might collaborate in a more in an ecosystem of data sharing and data integration. So that might be the next level our solution. Others, I guess, many solutions might go in the future. So this access to data, improving the data we collect at a daily basis. So yeah, that might be the future way.
Cool. Yeah, Johan?
Yeah, I mean, I've built products before, but with this one, it's still very much in the exploration phase. So rather than locking it down and like building a lot of features, we really want to like do a lot of projects with potential customers to kind of tune in where the value is before we kind of lock it down as a product. The other thing is, I mean, we look at this more as a starting point, and the interesting part is like when you combine it with actual strategies, like, you know, in terms of parking or new mobility. So I see this as kind of like step one in a further kind of like analysis and strategy package.
Cool. Okay, Ari, I think, you know, we've just nearly hit the end. Yeah, we managed to go through most of the questions, which is great. But obviously, if you've unfortunately missed it or so, please feel free to reach out and we'll get you in touch with the speakers and presenters. So yeah, please let us know, and we can happily make an introduction for follow-up. Yeah, so I hope really you sort of enjoyed the last hour and a bit with us. Yeah, I know. I think I would obviously like to thank the three presenters who took also, you know, their time in their busy lives, you know, being on the road, just coming back from overseas and whatever, still making this webinar. Thanks so much, guys. So, in a little applause to them. Yeah, so well done, and yeah, I wish you all then a successful rest of the week, and yeah. Let's keep in touch, and please stay tuned for have a look at our next webinar, which is taking place in June, or join our workshop in Rotterdam. And yeah, let's stay connected. Okay, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you,
Alex, and everyone.
Thank you.
You guys.
Bye.
Bye bye. Have a great day.